Welcome to Lotus Lane Daily. I'm glad you're here. Today's wisdom is for anyone going through something hard. You know that feeling when your child, grown now, old enough to know better, someone you gave years of your life to, looks at you and says that everything wrong in their life is your fault? Maybe they said it directly in a fight that left you both shaking. Maybe they said it slowly, over years, in the accumulation of small accusations, loaded silences, the way they recount their childhood to other people in ways you barely recognize. Maybe they've gone distant in a way that is its own kind of verdict. I am this way because of you, and being near you is too much to bear. If you're reading this at 2 a.m., chances are you've been carrying this for a long time. You've turned it over and over. You've tried to remember what you did wrong, what you could have done differently. You've felt the shame of it, the defensiveness of it, the grief of it. You've probably swung between believing them completely and thinking none of it is fair, sometimes in the same hour. This is one of the most painful things a parent can experience, and it's also one of the least talked about, because the cultural story of parenthood has no place for it. There's no script for the parent who is just trying to understand what happened and how to survive it. What's true and what isn't? Let's start with the harder part. Some of what they're saying may be true. Not in the way they're saying it, maybe. Not with the totality and the finality of it, not with you as the sole author of every difficulty in their life. But there are things you did wrong. There are things every parent does wrong, because parenting is done by imperfect human beings who were themselves shaped by imperfect human beings, and the chain goes back a very long way. If you are genuinely willing to ask what you got wrong, the honest answer is probably not nothing. That acknowledgement matters. Saying, I know I wasn't always the parent I wanted to be, is not the same as saying, everything you've said about me is accurate and I am responsible for every bad thing that has happened to you. Both things are possible at the same time. You made real mistakes, and they are misunderstanding or overstating or organizing a complex story into a shape that gives them somewhere to put their pain. Here is what is very unlikely to be true, that you alone caused all of it. Human beings are shaped by genes, by peers, by partners, by the random luck of which experiences they encountered and when. Blame laid entirely at one person's door is almost always a simplification. And the more absolute and totalizing the blame is, the more likely it is functioning as something other than accurate accounting. Blame that complete is often doing emotional work, organizing chaos into a story, giving formless suffering a name and a source. One thought that comes back to me often: every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. That applies to your child, who is carrying things you may not fully understand. But it applies to you too, to the parent who is raising them through their own battles, their own unprocessed pain, their own limitations. You deserve the same complexity you're extending to them. What the blame is often really about. When a grown child assigns all responsibility for their struggles to a parent, it sometimes reflects something real about their experience of childhood. But it also often reflects something about where they are now. Blame is sometimes a way of not having to feel powerless. If this happened to me because of what you did, then there is an explanation, a cause, and therefore a person responsible. That is often more bearable than the alternative, that life is uncertain and painful, and some of what happened simply happened, without a clean cause or a person to hold accountable. This doesn't mean the blame is dishonest. It usually isn't consciously strategic, but it does mean that engaging with it purely on its own terms, defending yourself against each accusation or completely capitulating to each accusation, may miss what's actually being asked for underneath it. What is often underneath blame is a need to feel witnessed, to have someone say, your pain was real, what you felt was real, you weren't making it up, you weren't too sensitive. If you can offer that without simultaneously accepting the role of sole villain, it sometimes moves things. Not always, but sometimes. What you can do that actually helps. Separate acknowledgement from agreement. I can hear that what happened to you felt terrible, and I'm sorry you were in pain, is not the same as I agree with your account of what caused it. Many parents can't get to genuine acknowledgement because they're so busy defending themselves that there's no room for the other person to feel heard. Acknowledgement first, clarification later, or possibly not at all if the clarification would just become another battle. Be honest with yourself about your role, privately, without them present, not as self-flagellation, but as genuine inquiry. A therapist can help with this enormously. Was there neglect, even if unintentional? Was there emotional unavailability? Was there control disguised as love? Were there years when you were dealing with your own difficulties and the children got less than they needed? None of this makes you a bad person. But honest reckoning is the only way to know what a genuine apology, if one is warranted, actually covers. Understand what you can and cannot fix. If your child needs you to be entirely responsible for their pain in order to feel safe, there is nothing you can say or do that will satisfy that need, because the need is not actually about you, it's about their own relationship with their life. A wise observation from an old collection of letters. Our lives are like gardens. We can grow flowers or we can grow weeds. It all depends on what we plant and how we tend our garden. At some point, the garden of their life is theirs to tend. Set a limit on what you will absorb. You are allowed to say that being blamed for everything is too painful to sit with without a break. You are allowed to say, I love you, and I can't have this conversation when it becomes this kind of conversation. Protecting yourself from ongoing cruelty is not the same as refusing accountability. Genuine accountability requires enough emotional safety to actually engage with what's true. A relationship where you are only ever on trial cannot do much good for either of you. If they've cut contact, some parents reading this are not just dealing with blame, but with estrangement, a child who has left the relationship entirely. That is its own category of pain, profound and disorienting. But one thing is worth saying, estrangement is sometimes reversible, and sometimes it is not. And living with that uncertainty may be the hardest part. The most honest thing you can do is keep the door open without pressing on it. Communicate once that you are willing to talk, that you care, that you're not going away. And then let time do what only time can do. The most powerful thing you can offer a child who has pulled away is not an argument about who is right. It's the evidence, over time, that you are still there, still capable of love, still willing to try. A line I keep returning to, the most powerful thing you can do for another person is believe in them, even when they cannot believe in themselves. That belief, held steady through years if necessary, sometimes turns out to be exactly what finally made the difference. You may never get the acknowledgement you deserve. You may never have the conversation where they say, I know it wasn't all your fault. I know you were doing your best. That would be healing, and it may not come. Grieving that possibility is real and necessary, but you can still choose, in your own life, to be someone who has reckoned honestly with what you got wrong and made peace with what you got right. You can live out the rest of your days without waiting for their verdict to decide your worth. That is something no one can take from you. You are not only what your child says you are also everything that came before and everything that is still possible. Hold on to that. That's the wisdom for today. If something here landed for you, share it with one person who might need to hear it too. Take it slow. I'll see you tomorrow on Lotus Lane Daily.